Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. So, today I am going to be taking part in the Warrior Goddess Training Leadership Challenge. So, for those of you who don't know, I am a certified Warrior Goddess facilitator. And what that means is that I have taken a course on HeatherAsh Amara's Warrior Goddess Training book, and I've learned how to facilitate workshops and classes that help people tap into their power to be leaders in this world and to connect with themselves, to be in sovereignty and ownership of who they are, and to move through this world from a place of deep knowing and connecting with intuition. And a lot of these teachings are based on the Toltec wisdom. And so HeatherAsh Amara was a student of Don Miguel Ruiz, and she took everything that she learned and was given the permission to take what she learned and turn it into something that supports women and people having a female experience on this earth. And what that means to me is people who have lived through a lot of oppression, lived through the results of oppression, and because of that, they have had to learn how to regain ownership of themselves and their energy. And for so many of us who identify as female in this world and have these experiences, a lot of times we just don't know how to do that. We don't get guidance on how to take our power in this world, how to step into and be fully comfortable with who we truly are, and then after doing that, let our light shine super brightly in the world and step into our dharma, into our life purpose. And so what I love about Warrior Goddess Training is that it teaches you how to do that. It's essentially like a playbook on how to do that. And so this challenge today is asking us as leaders, as facilitators, to step into our power, to do just that, and to teach. And I'm really grateful to be receiving this challenge because I really, I teach yoga. I teach Ayurvedic health through cleansing. I teach women's health. I teach activism, and I teach about how to uplift women of color in spiritual spaces. But since being certified as a warrior goddess facilitator, I really haven't taught a lot of the warrior goddess work. I've done a little bit of it here and there. There was a retreat I hosted where I was able to do it, but I really haven't dove into teaching the work. I've done a lot of practicing it in my personal life. But right now, I get to actually share it. And right now is the perfect time to do so because for those of you who don't know, I can't imagine there are any of you who don't know, we are going through a powerful process of awakening in this time in life. And we are awakening to the years and years, the hundreds of years of oppression that has fallen on people of color. We are awakening to our immortality in the midst of a pandemic. We are awakening to the fact that our planet needs us, that, she needs us to turn ourselves around so that we can continue to be the human race on this planet, essentially. And a lot of this stuff is incredibly heavy. We talk about it, I'm sure, every day. I'm sure you're talking about it in your circles every day. And right now, we really need to have these guidebooks that we can turn to that allows us to really connect to our deepest, truest essence so that we know how to show up, because we're all being called to show up in some shape or form in our lives these days. And so the challenge is that I got to pick out of a grab bag 3 random chapters from the Warrior Goddess Training book, and I am going to be teaching you based on the chapters that I chose. So today, we are going to be learning about chapter 1, which is connecting to you. And this could not be a more powerful chapter. I'm so excited to be teaching it. And it's something that's been really present for me in my personal life lately because Something that has been on my mind is the art of self possession. And what I mean by that is owning yourself, deeply connecting to your essence, knowing the strength and power of your personal energy, and knowing when to share it, when to cloak it, when to protect it, and when to kind of be in a neutral place where you can really do whatever you want to do with it at any time. And to me, as a woman of color, this is super powerful because being a person of color in this world means that you're going to encounter a lot of situations where your energy is going to be drained, whether you like it or not, where people are going to expect certain things from you, where people are going to not even realize that you exist or care. And that in itself can be really draining and really heavy. You're going to encounter situations where you are literally fighting for your life just for being who you are. And it can be very heavy sometimes. But what I've learned from my own personal journey on this planet is that when I know how to tap into and fully connect to my personal power, my ability to set loving and healthy boundaries for myself, my ability to speak up and use my voice, my ability to tap in and notice my light and shine my light in spaces where I feel like I'm not being seen, my ability to ground my energy, all of these things, then I am able to navigate through this world in a really beautiful way that transcends the color of my skin. That reminds me that I can do and be whatever the heck I want to be in this life, and nobody gets to tell me how to do that but me. So this chapter is really powerful for those reasons. And I've put together 4 speaking points that I want to share with you today. I've got some quotes that I want to read to you today so that you can really pick up on the essence of what this chapter is about. I've even got some practices that you can use to integrate this work into your life right away. So let's go ahead and dive in. And I want to start with a beautiful quote that is written in this chapter. So it says, power has nothing to do with money or fame or outside appearances, but with our connections to self-love, authenticity, and the inner mystery of life. From this perspective of true abundance and imminent spiritual connection, powerful people are the ones who have the strongest connection to the internal resources. And I just want to give you a moment to let that sink in because that is such a powerful quote. And what it means to me is that we harness this infinite wellspring of power. And when we talk about power in our world, one word that comes up for me is supremacy, right? And especially when we're talking about this in terms of looking at social justice and social equity, there's a big idea that some of us reign supreme over others solely based on the color of our skin. But that's just not true. We all hold an immense and deep power inside of us, and we have at any moment the ability to connect to that power. And there is an illusion going on in this life that we live that says that if we don't have certain privileges, then we just can't connect to that power. And that just isn't true. So the first thing I want to do as we drop in to talking about this amazing topic of connecting with ourselves is just invite you to fully open to the definition of power for you and the definition of self-connection for you. So as we go through this, I have some talking points, I have some some beautiful journaling practices, and I even have a meditation that I'm going to guide you through. But I just want you to kind of think about, what is power for you? Where is your source of power? Where does power come from? And wherever that is, meet yourself with compassion, because maybe it might be material for you at this time. Maybe it might be based on how much money you make or what you have. And if that's the case, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm going to tell you why. We live in a society where we are told that the power that we hold is based on what we have and our status. And so that if that's how we've been brought up, and if that's what we've been conditioned to think, then it only makes sense that that's what we think about ourselves, and that's okay. But I invite you to open up your mind and be willing to attach a different definition to power. So that's all I'm going to say on that for right now. We're going to jump into the first talking point. And this is number 1, committing to yourself means saying yes to all parts of you. And this is something that is talked about in chapter 1 of the Warrior Goddess Training book written by HeatherAsh Amara. And saying yes to all parts of you, it's super easy to say, but to actually do it, to actually step into the energy of your full sacred yes, can be terrifying. Saying yes to living this life, to taking the journey, saying yes to meeting yourself in places of pain and fear, saying yes to stepping out of your comfort zone, even when it means that you might be putting your life on the line, can be terrifying. And you never know what your sacred yes is going to be, right? You never know when you're going to have to step up to something that is scary. But committing to yourself means saying yes to all parts of you. Now, in the same vein, I just want to kind of add in there that it also means honoring your sacred no. And knowing that you have the permission to say no to anything that doesn't feel good for you. And an example that I'll use for myself is, when I've had people come to me and ask me to have conversations on race that in that moment I just wasn't ready to have. Where, I've had people come to me and say, hey, let's talk about this recent happening, this recent person that I ran into in the grocery store. I mean, I'm making up a situation for the sake of this talk, but I've had moments in my life where people have come to me wanting to speak on subjects that, just really emotionally drained me. Subjects like the death of George Floyd, where I had in that day watched the video at least 5 times and had just been so bogged down in my own grief and processing of the situation that I wasn't ready to have the conversation anymore. And so honoring my sacred no went hand in hand with me saying yes to all parts of myself, because I had to say no to the conversation to set a loving boundary for myself and for that person, because I wasn't ready to meet them in a productive conversation at that time. And I had to say yes to myself in saying yes to what I was feeling in that moment. Saying yes and giving myself permission to give someone my sacred no. And this can show up in so many different ways in your life. I'm referencing a lot of situations that are specific to my experience as a woman of color and to the current social climate, but all of these teachings can be applied to any portion of your life. So just knowing that committing to yourself means saying yes to all parts of you. This goes even deeper into saying yes to the color of your skin, to the shape of your body, to the texture of your hair, all of it. So I really invite you to dig deep into that. Commit to yourself. Say yes to all parts of you. The next step here, the next talking point I want to share with you is that it's important to uncover the agreements you've made that shape your story and release what doesn't serve you or your highest good. So, what this means when we talk about agreements is that at certain points in your life, you learn things. You learn how to be in this world. And this comes from your experiences. And in those moments, whether they're traumatic or whether they're joyful and beautiful experiences that you feel like, yes, I love this and I want to keep doing this, this feels right to me, this feels aligned to me, you start to make an agreement with yourself and you say, okay, this is how I'm going to show up in the world so that I can either receive more of this situation or avoid this situation and never have to go through it ever again. And the thing about that is that it's a really beautiful way of showing up for yourself in that moment, right? But eventually it may not serve you. And it may be something that, you made this agreement with yourself as a child that because I spoke up in my group of friends, and actually let me just give you a more specific example. When I was a kid, I grew up around a lot of kids that were white. I went to a predominantly white school, and I didn't have a lot of friends who were Black. And in middle school, I did have a group of Black friends, finally for the first time. But then I met some kids that were white, and actually one of the people that is still to this day my very best friend, this was 6th grade that I met her, or 7th grade that I met her, I believe. And I'm 28 now, so it's a very long and beautiful friendship. But anyways, that's a tangent. But so, I met this person. I started to hang out with another group of people, and my Black friends rejected me. And so in that moment, I made this agreement with myself that I was safer with white people because they didn't reject me, because they accepted me for who I was, and because they didn't care who I hung out with. And over time, that agreement started to hurt me because I wasn't making connections with people of color, which is so incredibly important. And at the time, I just didn't understand that. I didn't realize how important it was. And so as I grew up, I would tend to hang out with the white kids, and I would be afraid to connect with people of color because I thought that they wouldn't like me. I thought that they wouldn't accept me. And at one point, I had to let go of that agreement. I had to free my energy. I had to let myself know that it is okay to create a new agreement. It is okay to connect with people of color. And in fact, it's important. So my new agreement is that it is important to connect with people of color. It is important to connect with Black people and Indigenous people of color and white people and all people. But it is safe to connect with people of color. So that was, an agreement that I had to uncover. I had to uncover that in myself because I didn't know at the time in 6th grade that I was taking that agreement on. I just did it. It was something that formed in my mind. It was a tiny seed that was planted. And it was so beneath the surface that I had to do the work. I had to do the work to uncover it. And the work looked like being in situations where I would start to question, like, why am I not comfortable around these people? What is it about this situation that is triggering me and making me feel nervous or anxious or just like I'm not good enough? And that is usually those feelings that don't feel so good. That's actually what leads to the root of what you're trying to get to the bottom of. So it's so important not to bypass those feelings when they come up, but meet them with compassion and be curious about them. And actually, HeatherAsh calls this stalking, but stalk yourself. And by that, like following what comes up, observing, and just noticing. So it's important to uncover the agreements you've made that shape your story and release what doesn't serve you or your highest good. And then the last point I want to share here is to release the idea that power comes from material and egotistical things like money and status. And this is important because as we are working to reshape the paradigm that we're in, we have to understand that capitalism and colonization go hand in hand. And money and status are often used against us to make us feel like we don't have power in this world. I don't want to say that money is bad. I think it is a currency and an energy that we have that can do really beautiful things when we use it right. But it is not a direct measure of our power. Our power comes from within. It doesn't come from what we have. It doesn't come from the credentials that we have. It doesn't come from, our degrees, and it comes from within. So it's important to remember that and just release that idea. And essentially that's an agreement as well. The agreement that if I don't have the right job, or if I don't have a yoga teaching certification, I can't teach yoga. If I don't have the right job that gives me the money that will help me to afford that house in the suburbs, then I'm not worth anything, then I'm not doing anything with my life. None of that is true unless you choose for it to be true. But you can also choose something different. So that's something really powerful to look at. And when we talk about connecting to ourselves, how can you uncover where that's showing up in your life and connect to that? And, see, like, is this something that's serving me? Is this really who I am? Is this really even mine? Or is this something that came from my surroundings growing up, or my parents, or, other family members, or other people that influenced you growing up, that maybe you learned this and you never knew that you could actually take on a different belief. So I'll go back through those talking points and just give you something to marinate on. Committing to yourself means saying yes to all parts of you. It's important to uncover the agreements you've made that shape your story and release what doesn't serve you or your highest good. And release the idea that power comes from material or egotistical things like money and status. When we can break that status part down, just another kind of note to that, we start to break down the hierarchies that have been created, and we start to let there be room for everybody to have a seat at the table. And that's where true equity comes from. And so that's really important. So I want to give you some journaling prompts. You can use these to dive deeper into your self-exploration. And just, connect to them. If you write a few sentences, if you do all of them, or if you even just do one of them, this is your practice. You can do this however you'd like, but this will kind of help you to learn a bit more about yourself and connecting to yourself. So how do you define your self-worth and value? And how does that make you feel? So you can maybe list out how you define your self-worth and value and make a list of the feelings that come up. You can do whatever you'd like in whatever way you'd want to respond to that. In what ways do you find yourself tending to the needs of others over your own? And how can you set loving boundaries for yourself? What gives you strength and energy? And how can you cultivate more of that in your life? Who inspires you? Who are the people in your life that you can uplift and support? And in particular, to the topic and the theme of this challenge, who are the people of color in your life that you can uplift and support? And who are the people of color in your life that inspire you? And how can you send them love instead of beating yourself up with comparison? How can you find the essences that relate to yours in them? And by that I mean, in what ways are you similar to those people that you admire? What do you feel the world owes you? And how can you create that for yourself? And I feel that as a woman of color, that is a question that I've explored really deeply. What do I feel the world owes me? A lot of times I feel that the world owes me respect. Sometimes I feel like I just am owed the space to be seen and heard. And I realized only a few years ago, or even really, that I had to make that space for myself. I had to take up space for myself. And when I realized that, it was like opening up a doorway. And I was able to detach from the thought that I needed validation from other people to do what I wanted to do in the world, to talk and be heard. And now I just talk to talk. And if you want to hear it, you can listen. And if you don't, that's fine with me. So that is something really awesome to dive into and look at that for yourself. So what do you feel the world owes you, and how can you create that for yourself? And now I want to invite you into a meditation. And this is a meditation for connecting to your true essence. So wherever you are at this moment, whatever you're doing, I invite you to drop that for a moment and tap into yourself. And you can close your eyes if that feels comfortable and safe for you, or you can simply soften your gaze. Putting one hand over your sacral center, that space just below your navel, and one hand over your heart. Taking a deep breath in to the base of your belly, holding for a moment, and exhaling, maybe even exhaling with a sigh and just letting it all go. One more time, inhaling deeply, and exhale, release. And you might feel your shoulders soften, noticing the tension in your muscles. Taking another deep breath in to those spaces of tension and exhaling, letting it all go. Continuing to breathe in and out, connecting to the life force energy within you that is actually your breath. That is the first piece of your essence. That breath that flows in and out of your lungs, animating you, bringing movement to your body, allowing you to be in this world. And experience this world. And as you connect deeper and deeper to that breath, give yourself permission to let go of whatever thoughts are running through your mind. Whether they're judgment or plans for any future moments that are to come. And by letting go, I just mean allowing them to pass by. You don't have to stop these thoughts. Sometimes that's impossible, and that's okay. But just letting them pass by without attachment. And coming back to your breath whenever they start to distract you. And now taking that attention and sending it to your heart, right in the center of your chest, the heart space, the energetic heart. And your attention might even bring your breath there. So allowing the breath to go where the attention goes. And as you breathe into the heart space, start to breathe into the feeling of your heart. The heart is a space of emotion. And that emotion usually looks like compassion, connection, gratitude. But it can also be heavy. And if it is heavy, that's okay. But just noticing what you're feeling in your heart space right now. It can also look like courage. And maybe connecting to yourself takes a great deal of courage. So honoring that courage in you to be here in this space right now. And noticing if you don't feel that courage right now, and honoring that too, knowing that wherever you are on this path to deep self-connection is exactly where you need to be. And you always have a choice on which way you go as you take this journey. You can stop and be in one place. You can take one step forward, or you can sprint into this process of self-discovery. Your essence is seated in your heart. So I invite you to be here in this space for as long as you'd like, giving yourself permission to come back to this space whenever you want to, whether it's daily or whenever you're ready. And making it a practice to connect to your heart, connect to your essence, your deep inner light, your deep source of power. And using the breath to clear away what dampens this source of power. Inhaling and exhaling, letting that go, whether it be fully or in increments, that's okay, however it works for you. And then when you're ready and you feel clear in that space, even more deeply connecting to your essence. And breathing in even more life force energy into that essence, that light, allowing it to glow brighter and brighter, giving it a color. Doesn't matter what color it is, whatever color feels right to you. And with every inhale, deepening that color. And sitting here in that space of clearing and strengthening for just a few more moments. And when you're ready, bringing yourself lovingly and gently back into the present space. Maybe giving your sacral center a little rub and your heart a little rub before you remove your hands. Gently opening the eyes if you haven't done so already. And just connecting back into the present space. Knowing that at any time you can come back to this deep connection with yourself. You can replay this meditation. You can do it right before you start your journaling exercise. You can do it after. You can do it at any time in the day that you have time. What's really beautiful about connecting to yourself is that you're always with yourself. And when you really, really drop into that, what that really means, the fact that your consciousness is always on, that you are always here in your body, in your mind, in your spirit, you're never really alone. So I'm really grateful that you're taking this time for yourself. And I commend you because it is courageous. It isn't easy. Meeting yourself is actually one of the hardest things that you can do because you have to be truthful. You have to sometimes look at things that you haven't looked at for years. But it's such a powerful practice. And I'm so grateful that I pulled this as the first lesson that I get to teach from the warrior goddess training, because it is very much one of the most important. Now, I want to leave you with a bonus exercise from the warrior goddess training companion, and this is mirror gazing. So this is one that I actually personally had to really step into some courage to do. And when I finally did, it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And it actually, every single time I do it, I uncover another layer of who I am. And it's always different. And it is the act of mirror gazing. And it's all about looking at yourself and really looking at yourself and like staring into your own eyes, into your own soul in the mirror. And you can sit in front of a mirror for anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. I know people who have done it for an hour. And notice what comes up. Simply take note. What are your judgments? What are your triggers? What brings up emotion in you? What kind of emotion comes up in you? What is the nature of that? It's all about curiosity, really, because in this space, what you are learning to do is fully accept who you see in the mirror and fully connect to who you are. So you don't want to go into this with any expectations. Really, what you want to do is just be super curious. And I would suggest having a notebook with you so that you can take notes on what comes up. And what's really cool about that is every single time you do it, you're going to have something different that comes up, and you can start to compare the notes and say like, okay, I used to think this about myself. This used to be the way that I would meet myself in the mirror, and now it's totally different. So that's a bonus exercise, and it's something that you can do for as long as really feels comfortable to you. But I hope that it helps you to even more deeply connect to yourself. So thank you for joining me for this talk today. If you're listening through the Sexy Sacred Space podcast, then thank you for listening. And I hope that you feel inspired to share this with someone who you feel could use this and could benefit from these teachings in their own life. I would also like to invite you to check out my Instagram at Life by the Moon Yoga. And over there, I'm sharing a lot of really beautiful stuff, but one thing in particular is a recent passion project that I've got going on called the We Bleed 2 Virtual BiPOC New Moon Support Circle. And this is a new moon circle for female identifying people of color. The first circle will take place on August 18th at 5 p.m. Pacific time under the Leo new moon. And this will be a powerful space where female identifying people of color can come together and shed what no longer serves you. So just like we were talking about earlier, letting go of old agreements that maybe you built up within the past month. Maybe you've had it on your heart for a long time and you need to let it go. Maybe you're ready to let it go in pieces, or maybe you're ready to fully let it go. This is a space where you can come and do that and be witnessed in doing that and be supported by the energy of other people witnessing you, because there's something so powerful to that I can't even really describe. You've just got to experience it. And after we shed, we are going to be calling in and setting intentions for the moon cycle to come, that 28-day moon cycle. And so in that space, you will also be witnessed in setting your intentions. And I will give you some really powerful exercises you can use based on the energy of the new moon that will help you to connect to your ability to manifest situations you want to see for yourself, for your community, and for the planet. And so, if you want to know more about that space, if you want to register for that space, if you're a female identifying person of color, or if you want to share that space with other people of color in your life that you feel would benefit from it, then please follow me on Instagram at Life by the Moon Yoga. And I will have some updates, some links, and some information on how you can do that. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of the Sexy Sacred Space podcast. If you're watching this video, then thank you for joining me in this talk. Next week, I will be doing a talk on Chapter 8 of the Warrior Goddess Training book written by HeatherAsh Amara. And Chapter 8 is on speaking your truth. So we will dive into the power of using your voice and why it is so important to do so. And so be sure to check back in, and I will see you next week.